Good morning and welcome to C.A.B.B Notes for May of 2016. This morning we're talking about the joy of bicycling. And I'm sure for many of us, bicycling's always been a big thing in our lives. I can remember when I was, fifth grade, fourth grade? No, I got on my first bicycle and somebody was pushing behind me and I said, okay, you let go now. And by that time they were way behind the road and there I was, off on the bicycle. and it must have been about this next year, we lived in north central Pennsylvania and we rode 6 miles, over to Jersey Shore and went to the Army surplus store and bought dust masks. When we came back, we weren't choked with the dust on the road. But bicycling is always been I remember in high school, almost every day, I think after school I'd get out and I'd just ride my bicycle all over town, here and there. It's really great recreation. So very happily we have two expert bicyclers here, Bruce Lehrman and Stuart Bradford, who've had many years of experience. So do you want to share how you started riding a bicycle, Bruce?
Yes, I had a similar experience to you, although I think actually I was in kindergarten when I got my first bike, which had, it was like a BMX bike today, only not nearly that sophisticated, with probably a plumbing pipe frame, and it weighed more than I did, I think, at the time. And I was the youngest in the group that I rode with, so they all had bigger, more expensive, better bikes than I did. And I remember that 5 mile experience, or that 6 mile experience too. The first day we went out, we were going to go catch crawdads, and the creek that we were going in was 5 miles away. Well, that's a lot of turns of the pedals on a 20-inch bike. But I did make it. I wasn't sure that I would be a cyclist after that, but I did make it, and later on I learned to love it. Now, I went to a somewhat larger high school, perhaps, than you did in central Pennsylvania, but so by the time I got to high school, it was very uncool to ride a bicycle to high school. Wow. I mean, you were just waiting to get the driver's license. That's all life was about. So, but I was the guy, I was the geek who did ride my bicycle to high school. And it's funny, when I go to reunions or meet old friends, that's still one of the first things they remark on. Oh yeah, you're the guy that rode the bicycle to high school. Now they think that's okay. Then it did not win me a lot of friends. So
interesting.
That was my early life with bicycles.
Yeah. And when did Stuart start riding a bike?
Well, I had sort of a similar experience. It was very uncool to ride a bicycle to high school, although it was 2 miles away. I could have easily ridden. It was a somewhat major road, but I don't recall a single person, even in town, riding a bicycle to high school. Now, I lived out in the country, and I could have also ridden the bike to my country school. I don't recall there was anything like 20-inch wheels. My brother had a bike. It was a big bike, and I rode that. But the idea wasn't to ride it to get there. It was to do something with it. So the only time I rode it to this country school, this one-room school, was when we kids had the idea we'd take our bikes and ride it round and round the schoolhouse. And so that was the point. You had to get it there some way, so you had to ride it there. But when you got there, and then one time one kid rode the opposite direction, and we collided, and our teacher was sort of a very kind of fearful woman, decided we couldn't bring bikes anymore.
Oh dear.
So that was the end of the bicycling. And and then when in college, I went to college at a very large campus with an ideal place to ride a bike, but I didn't ride much then either. So I came to it somewhat late in life. I lived long enough, so I have bicycled some years, and it means a lot to me now. Although I'm not a certified cycle nut, there are a lot of those around. I can hopefully put in perspective. I mean, you're probably one, Bruce.
It depends on how you look at it. I talk a good game, but I think I probably ride half the mileage that you do. I ride to the grocery store, and it's sort of a pact or a promise that I have with myself that every time I go get a 12-pack of beer, I have to do it on my bicycle so that I'm getting a little bit of exercise as part of the process. And That's so a few groceries or a 12-pack of beer. That I can. That's what my bicycle gets used for most of the time.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So fast forward to now, what are some recent biking events or occasions that you've done or experienced or been a part of?
Well, like Stuart, I really kind of came to it later in life. When I still lived in the Philadelphia suburbs. I started commuting to work there.
Oh, really?
Now, mind you, this is not downtown. This is out in the far western suburbs where the streets are pretty quiet and you can find a pretty quiet route to work. And I started doing it, and I really found that I really enjoyed it. That I found mostly not so much for the exercise itself, but it was a great way to unwind after a day in the office.
Oh, yeah.
Here was a chance to, I had a mountain bike. There was an old abandoned railroad track between where I worked and where I lived. So I got about 2 miles of bumping down the
Wow.
the old, it wasn't an official bike path. It was just, they just pulled the rails and left it there. And it was now just a single deer track through the woods. And that was a wonderful way to just kind of forget about the cares of the day and being in an office all day.
Yeah.
And when we moved to Vermont, I had more time to bicycle and got very interested in touring. So though I say I only ride, around to pick up groceries locally, I do go on tour quite often. I've ridden around Lake Champlain twice.
Oh, wow.
And over to the White Mountains in New Hampshire. And I really enjoy being on the road for several days. And we can talk more later about some of the equipment and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So those are the kinds of things I've done. I'm definitely not a competitive rider. This summer there are going to be a lot of events around the National Park Centennial, and of course this is National Bike Month, so there are going to be events this month. We are currently in Bike to Work Week, and then in June I'll be talking more later about an event that we're going to have at Lake Shaftesbury State Park, which is going to be sort of a ride-in camping event at the group campsite at Lake Champlain, at Lake Shaftesbury.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody is invited to call and reserve a space. The campsites will be free that weekend for us.
Oh, neat.
And of course you can use the lake facilities for normal day use cost, but there'll be lean-to campsites and they'll be free for the people who want to come.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah, so if you want to try bicycle camping or bicycle touring, this might be a good way to do it.
So that would be organized so you'd go out on different biking each day, or?
Yes, we're hoping people that will bike to the park from Manchester or Bennington or Cambridge. It's about 10 or 15 miles from any of those beginning points. We have the campsites for 2 nights, and there are lots of great gravel and hardpan dirt roads around Lake Shaftesbury. They're more challenging climbs than you would find here in town, but there's some beautiful roads to ride in, and there just happens to be a really great ice cream shop
Oh, okay.
in 2 different directions about 3 miles away. So that is very important to cyclists usually, and it certainly is to me. So that also makes it a good location.
Got to keep your energy up there.
Absolutely, yes. You don't want to waste away while you're riding your bike.
Right.
Of course, it's the Chinese year of the bicycle.
Is that right? Oh, yes, I forgot about it. Then the rabbit, and then the monkey, and then the bicycle. Right. That's right.
So what have some of your recent biking adventures taken you, Stuart?
I have gone on a lot of bicycle tours, so usually just on a week or so, a couple weeks. And I'll just back up a little bit. I guess a seminal event in my bicycle life was when I moved to Boston to work, and 2 things happened shortly after I got there. I bought a bicycle at a bicycle shop, and the next day it was stolen. I went back and bought a second bicycle. But I hadn't, and because I got the idea that maybe I'd bicycle around a little bit, but there was a notice in the bicycle store, it said bicycle club forming, and that really transformed me. Although bicycling is something obviously you can do by yourself, that's a great advantage of it. But and I, for the most part, I like to do things by myself. But somehow, bicycling, I ended up enjoying doing in a group, and not to make too dramatic statement, but it expanded my horizons. All of a sudden I realized, wow, you can, I thought 5 or 10 miles, that's a pretty long ride. But if you go in a group, you can ride 50 miles, even ride 100 miles, and met some cyclo nuts there, including my name, Ralph Galen. And so he must have been desperate for people in his club, and he put me in charge of a tour in Nova Scotia.
Whoa.
And so that was fun. And that was one of the few camping tours I ever did. Now, Bruce, I know you are often self-supported, but I admit I'm not that ambitious. I often, earlier days, went with large groups, and every state has these. And they will take trucks and carry your camping gear. So you just ride your bike with whatever you need for the day, and you put up your tent at the end of the day, and there's meals served. So it's easy and fun and inexpensive. And I've done those in quite a few states. And then later, harder than I went, took some trips to Europe, quite a few trips, in fact.
That group riding aspect is really important, I know, for a lot of people. Again, when I go on tour, it's me or one or two people, but the group rides are really a lot of fun. And I do one ride each year. The total route is from Connecticut to Montreal, and I'll be riding it this year from Williamstown to Montreal.
Wow.
With the same group I've ridden with for the past several years. It's called the Western New England Greenway. It's just a mapped route. We're on bike paths when they're available, but usually we're just on secondary roads. And there really is, and there we have a van that takes our stuff from place to place too. And this is sort of high-end touring. We stay in B&Bs, and we eat very well, usually about 5 meals a day. And it's much more a social event than it is a fitness event. But they're really a lot of fun, and you meet great people. You don't really stick together all day. Everybody rides at their own pace, but you know kind of where you're going to have lunch or which country stores you like to stop at, and you always know where you're going to be staying for the night. So there's a wide variety, as Stuart said, of camping or travel options when you're touring by bike. I mean, really, all you need is a road map and a hip pocket full of credit cards, and you can go tour as far as you want. So, and a lot of people do it just that way. They carry a little package on their bike that's got one change of clothes, and they may be gone for a month. Just if they need something, they'll buy it, and at night they just check into a motel, and that's their way of travel. Or you can travel with a full self-contained rig where you're basically an RV with 2 wheels. I mean, you got a tent, you've got cooking equipment, you've got extra changes of clothing for any kind of climate, and that's a heavier form of camping that I like. You travel a lot slower. A 40-mile day is a big day when you're fully loaded with touring equipment. Whereas, as Stuart says, with a group of friends and with light equipment, 60 to 100 miles a day is not hard to do. So, well, 100 miles is hard to do.
I love it there. So, what about the equipment thing then?
Okay.
Stuart has a...
Well, I'm a great fan of the folding bike. Sort of a story behind that. I don't know at this point there's time to take that up, but maybe I'm a little over enthusiastic about it because you don't see many, even whether you might expect to see them. And Bruce and I both were in the Netherlands on a bike tour, and I had our folding bikes, you rented bikes, but I didn't see many folding bikes there, even though I thought they were just the bee's knee, And I'll show you how easy it is. You have this bike, and you want to throw it in the back. Remember the levers here. You want to throw this in the trunk of your car. You don't need a big van, and here you have. Yeah, get these things right here.
There you go.
Wouldn't you know, when you try to demonstrate how simple something is, I somehow got something twisted here.
Well, of course.
Get
That's it.
we
There,
are.
it, yeah.
And so I can put that in the back of my car.
Wow.
And, or I can, as Bruce, you remember, put these on the train fairly easily.
Absolutely. And you should definitely show them how you pack to get it overseas.
That's right. That would take a little longer. I put them in this suitcase here. And I don't have the proper suitcase because I didn't want to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars on it. So I went to the department store and bought this, regular suitcase. And I do have to take off the wheels, and of course the handlebars will come down here,
Yeah.
and the seat post, the seat will come down, and so on.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know if I want to necessarily do that
No,
right now.
yeah.
But
Yeah, we get the idea.
believe me, it does come
You'll
down
have to
very-
take a cab home.
but it does take about 15 minutes
Uh-huh.
or more to put in the suitcase. Because I have a somewhat smaller suitcase than I should have, it can take quite a while. I take the pedals off, these come off very easily, and I have to take my rack off and wheels and so on. So that's definitely somewhat of a big job.
Uh-huh.
But if I'm going to Europe for 2 weeks, and I can bring my own bike, I don't have to rent a bike,
Yes.
Yeah.
and I don't have to pay the very high fees to take a regular bicycle on the plane.
Yeah.
All right.
And I have this with me all the time.
Right.
Uh-huh.
I know you can talk about your experiences, Bruce, but you had to bring your bikes back
Exactly.
and so on. So it's
And
some
you don't
downside.
necessarily get the bike that you'd prefer
Yeah.
to ride. The ones we rented in Holland were big. They're Dutch bikes. They're heavy, single speed or sometimes 3-speed bikes. And although it's flat there, sometimes it's nice to have a little something you're more used to. And
Yeah.
that's certainly the advantage you had there.
And these are pretty lightweight. And one other great advantage I find is that you could compare that to my other bike there. If I were to run into some dodgy ground, I just put my foot down here.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to fall like
Yeah.
I tumble off there, and hit my head or something.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. If you need to paddle through, they're very nice arrangement.
and I can go on all sorts of surfaces. I don't like to go on gravel with a narrow tired bike.
Right. Right. Yeah, when we were down in Nantucket there a while back, we rented 2 bicycles, I don't know, for an hour and a half or something like that. It cost you like $65 or $70.
It's
Yeah.
incredible.
Exactly.
You know, I'll just interrupt you for a moment. Hart and I went to San Diego, and just a joke, I said, well, why do we save money and we'll rent bikes? We're in town, we'll just rent bikes.
Uh-huh.
Why, we rent a car for $25 a day. It would cost us $50 a day for 2 bikes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the Netherlands, they were a little more reasonable than that. Well, because we were renting them for a week at a time,
Uh-huh.
and because a lot of people, when they travel in Europe, there's a bike shop either at or near the railroad station in every town, and people see it as a form of transportation. So they know,
Oh.
if you won't sell them a bike or rent them a bike for, 25 euros for a week, somebody down the street will. So there's a lot more
Oh, more
competition for
competition.
your market. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
When you go to the resort sites here in the U.S., it's usually
Top dollar.
it's top dollar and take it or leave it. So
Uh-huh.
not as friendly that way.
Yeah. So, I'm wearing this bike helmet here, just to remind everybody, wear your helmets. So, what's your experience and general information about wearing bike helmets? It's not state required yet, right?
It is not state required. It's not a law. There have been various discussions about making it mandatory for children under 12 or children under 14, but right now there's no law addressing that
Oh.
in Vermont. Let's just say it's a law of common sense.
Yeah.
Okay. I wear my helmet whenever I ride. Mine's on my bike. So, you know, and the truth of the matter, you know, is people say, well, why should I bother to wear a helmet if if I get hit by a car, it isn't going to help me that much anyway. The fact of the matter, most of the accidents bicyclists have are just falling off their bike.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
falling off your bike and hitting your head on a curb can be just as fatal as being hit by a car.
Oh.
And helmets work. What else can I say? So
Yeah.
they take a little getting used to, and yes, it will mess up your hair. Comb your hair and enjoy the fact that you've saved your head.
Yeah.
So there are certainly many writers, well, not many, but there are certainly some writers here in Bennington who can testify to how much
Oh, yeah.
protection their helmet gave them in an accident. So
Mm.
wear your helmet.
Yeah, I heard one prominent citizen tumbled off his bicycle there on Williamsburg Road, just below the monument, right over the top, head first, and apparently was uninjured, basically.
That's right.
Uh-huh.
And his helmet, as I understand it, was split in two.
Yep.
But
Right.
his head wasn't, and that's the point.
Yeah, yeah, it's very powerful. Have you had any particular experience with helmets, Stuart?
No, I mean years ago, because you didn't wear a helmet, you didn't
Yeah.
have any of the specialized gear. And I can't remember what the first bit of specialized gear I had. Might have been gloves, you know, for using.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And eventually, it took a while to accustom myself to a helmet. You know, you ride there, and the wind whistles through your hair, and you just
Yeah.
have a sense of freedom. And now you have that helmet on you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then you get the bright jersey, and that's so silly, but then people can see you better.
Yeah.
And you get the padded shorts. You know, I don't want to show up in these funny padded shorts. Black spandex, but they are much more comfortable.
Mhm.
Do you wear padded shorts when you ride
I do.
on longer trips?
I do,
Uh,
although I
Bruce?
almost never just wear the padded shorts. I mean, no one wants to see me in spandex.
Yeah.
So quite often what I'll wear is a pair of these convertible pants like I have on here, which, you know, again, if you're traveling light, I'll wear a set of bike shorts underneath them.
Uh-huh.
And then the
Yeah.
bottom half of these
Oh, look at that.
pants zip off.
Uh-huh.
So I can wear them as shorts during the day. When we get to the end of the day's travels and we're ready to go out to dinner, I can zip these back on and look more presentable.
Oh, neat.
And it's also a nice thing if you run into cold weather.
Sure.
So you got a little something to
Absolutely.
protect you.
Yeah.
So I use these on bike tour all the time.
Uh-huh. Yeah, what an interesting idea.
I tend to do that too. I mean, if I'm riding around town with my a bicycle club, I would wear the spandex. But other than this is sort of a padded short that I would wear underneath my
Yeah.
shorts. Although you're probably better off wearing regular bicycle.
It depends on what the weather's like.
Yeah.
Sometimes with the two layers, it gets a little uncomfortable, and those, the padded shorts work great. Yeah.
So what are some other pieces of equipment you have there, Stuart, in your suitcase?
Well, do I? Probably better than tennis shoes is something that has a stiff sole.
Oh, really? Huh.
I mean, ordinary city shoes I think are fine too. Now this one I have a cleat on. I went on a tour. I often don't use cleats, but
Uh-huh.
What do the cleats do? What are the cleats for?
good question.
He's wondering that as
Well,
well.
I wanted you to show me on your bike what the cleats do. Do you have your
Oh
clipless
yeah,
pedals
yeah.
on there?
Well,
Yeah.
I don't, but I have. Unfortunately, I didn't think of this. There are different styles of cleats, and
Yeah.
many cleats stick
Oh.
out underneath your shoe and very difficult to walk on. You have to walk on the
Yeah,
back.
sure.
Now,
Yeah.
these are recessed cleats, and they will clip in here and keep me attached to the bike.
Huh.
And that you really have a much better pedaling cadence with that because you're
Yeah.
connected all the time rather than go and then
Yeah.
you're loose.
Oh, yeah.
So once you've used cleats and got used to them, you'll probably want to stick to them.
Uh-huh.
Now you say, what if you fall?
Yeah, right.
But you come out by twisting your foot
Oh.
slightly, and that becomes automatic.
Uh-huh.
Before becomes automatic, you probably come to a stop and fall because you forgot to
Twist your foot.
twist
Oh,
your
yes.
foot.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And you say, what if you had an accident or clipped into your bike? Well, first of all, you'll probably come flying out. And second of all, if you don't fly out, you're probably better off. Because
Exactly.
the bike can absorb
Some of the.
Oh, yes.
the shock.
Yeah.
So having said that, nonetheless, when I go on trips with my wife and so on, I don't usually use cleats. The pedals are easily interchangeable, so I could take the pedals
Oh, I
and
see.
cleats on
Huh.
for my other bike, but
Uh-huh.
generally I don't do that.
They do make for a lot of pedaling efficiency.
Mhm.
That's for sure. Besides a helmet, in terms of protective gear, the next thing in line for me is gloves. Because I'm sure
Oh.
you remember when you were a kid, the
Oh.
first thing that takes the damage when you fall off your bike is right here
Yep.
on the palms of your hands. Every kid in grade school had a rash on his palms from
Yeah.
so I just go to Home Depot and buy myself a set of work gloves.
Uh-huh.
They happen to have these that are not only bright colors so people can see when I signal my turns,
Yeah.
they're also a little bit reflective. So even at night they give a little bit of warning.
Yeah.
And I wear out a set of those about once every 2 years.
Uh-huh.
And like I say, they cost very little. They're easily replaceable any place, and that's about my next layer of protection after the helmet.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, the other thing is some kind of eye protection.
Oh.
If you wear glasses, that's okay, though you usually find some dirt will get in behind that. Some kind of wraparound glasses, again, these are just cheap safety glasses that you can buy at any hardware store. But they really keep the dirt and grit out of your eyes.
Yeah.
And obviously, if it's raining, they keep the rain out of your eyes. No one likes to think about riding in the rain, but it happens.
Yeah.
So that also is an important part of my safety equipment as well as my everyday dress.
Uh-huh.
Some grit or a bug in your eye can be a safety factor too, because
Absolutely.
you're so distracted from your.
Yeah, it takes your attention away, and we think of bicycles as going slow. Well, that's true, but 15 miles an hour and blind is not good.
Do you have a good, or do you use rear view mirrors?
Yes,
Bruce?
I have a mirror on my helmet, and I use it quite frequently. Especially, I find it helpful in Vermont because of the hills. And when you're climbing slowly, that's when the traffic's always overtaking you.
Mhm.
And also when you're climbing slowly, that's when you're a little less stable because the bicycle isn't moving as fast.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So although every time I change lane or make a movement on the pavement, I always turn my head, just like you were taught in driver training. You check the mirror, then you do a head check. Then you turn your head and look.
Yeah.
I always do that when I'm on the bike, but I do have this little mirror which gives me excellent view behind me. And the thing I like about having a helmet mirror is you can turn your head a little bit and you can kind of sweep.
Oh, sweet.
You can
Yeah.
pan around the horizon behind you and see if there's anything that you're missing. But again, I would never make a lane change just depending on what I saw in my mirror. I would always do a head check first to make sure that there's not any traffic immediately beside me.
Yeah.
The other thing about doing that, people, it's kind of subconscious, but it kind of lets the driver behind you know that you know they're there.
Uh-huh.
When you turn your head, it's kind of a cue to other drivers. Oh, he's about to do something, or he's acknowledging me. I'm starting to pass. He's telling me he knows I'm here. People don't verbalize this, but it is kind of a silent communication between the bicyclist and the driver. So that's another reason to always turn your head before you make a move in traffic.
Uh-huh.
And then, of course, there's the bright colored clothing. There's the jacket. This one's waterproof, and as I'm sure people are seeing, it has reflective material on it as well, so people can see me a little bit at night. That's how I'm generally dressed when I go riding. I'm usually in street clothes like this. You can see I got my pants tucked in my socks because that keeps them out of the chain.
Yeah.
But most of the time when I ride, I'm not wearing any special clothing.
Yeah.
I just wear what I normally wear during the day. So.
So, chain guards are never coming back?
I have another bike that does have a chain guard on it.
Really?
And, I've forgotten what a great convenience that is. I say, no, I'm going to go on the bike with the chain guard. I don't have to tuck in my pant legs today.
Yeah.
And I don't have to worry about getting my pant leg greasy, which is the reason I tuck them in as much as to keep them out of the teeth.
Yeah. Yeah, well, of course, nowadays, so your pant legs tucked in, ticks. So, like keep your pant leg out of the chain guard, but
Yeah.
may keep a few ticks off.
Yeah. Depending on where you're riding, that may be an important consideration.
Yeah.
A bike like this is really, it's a mountain bike with all these racks on it to carry
Oh, yeah.
the equipment. So this bike is really more for rough roads.
Oh.
And if I want to go take Forest Service roads, for example,
Mhm.
this is the bike I would take on tour. Or if I know I'm going to be doing a lot of gravel.
Yeah.
I ride a lot on the gravel and in the dirt because I think those are some of the most beautiful roads.
Sure.
And it's that means I travel slow, but this bike I can basically take anywhere as far as the roads are concerned. So as you can see, it's got knobby tires on it.
Yeah.
It's got the racks, and there's also a trailer back there that I've used on the
Yeah.
longer tours.
Uh-huh.
You could that'll carry about 70 pounds of gear if you want to take it.
Oh, really?
And in fact, I think that's kind of the trap of taking a trailer. If you've got that trailer, you want to fill it up. And then 20 miles later, you're really sorry you did, And so, but people who are, let's say, going cross country, quite often take a trailer because they're going to have to take clothes for all climates.
Yeah.
And more extensive camping gear, and they may want to carry more food with them if they think they're going to be camping in remote locations. So it really can have its advantages if you do need to carry a lot of stuff. And we're on a part of the National Bike Route system, so we quite often here in Vermont get riders coming through who are on a transcontinental ride.
Wow.
It usually takes about 3 months to make the trip, and they'll be camping as often as they can to save money, of course. And we belong to an organization called Warm Showers, which is it's sort of like Airbnb for bicyclists. People can call you up and say, "It looks like I'm going to be in your neighborhood tomorrow night. Can you put me up?" Or if you got a place in your yard where I can pitch my tent. Because mostly what cyclists want when they're on tour is just a safe place to camp.
Yeah.
And there isn't, unfortunately, a state park or a commercial campsite every time you need one because you're maybe only covering 30 or 40 miles a day.
Yeah.
So, so we quite often put them up for overnight. And, we, like I say, we have a spare room, so they usually use the spare room, and we got a washing machine so they can wash clothes if they want. And it's just a way to lower the costs of travel for people who are traveling by bicycle.
So how do you get on this list?
It's warmshowers.org on the internet, and you join up as a member, and you can be a host or you can be a user. And in fact, you don't have to be a member to get references of people who are part of the network that you can call up and try to book a room with or a place to stay some night. There's no requirement that you be a member. The members generally both use the service and host. So I have a we have a you know a little blurb on there that says, here's where we live. We have one room and we have a flat yard. Well, if you get in trouble, we know where the bicycle shops are within about 50 miles, and we could you know we can probably get you some help that way if something happens.
Huh.
And like I say, it's just sort of an exchange service. And
Yeah, well, that could be a very reassuring network for anybody who wants to do any extensive biking.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And it's frankly it's a lot of fun for
Oh.
both the cyclists and the hosts.
Sure.
You get a
Yeah.
chance to meet people who are right there from the local vicinity,
Mhm.
and so you know it's another way to make contact with the people, so you're not just passing through.
Mhm.
And we've had people from England and from all over the U.S. We had a couple who were riding coast to coast on their honeymoon.
Oh, lovely.
I often wondered how that
Yes.
marriage worked out, you know. But by the time they got here, and they were almost done, they were going to Boston. They were still together and still talking friendly to one another. So I think they probably did all right.
Wow, that's real acid test.
Yeah, yeah.
Huh.
So that's sort of the story with the heavier end of camping here, and that's I've gone on from the protective gear as well.
Yeah. So when you roll into a national park or a camping site with this, do you have to pay the same amount as a car would?
You paid the normal tent camping site, which is
Oh,
usually
nice.
less than less than the RVs.
Yeah, yeah.
It's usually in Vermont state parks. I think it's about $20 now. There is one interesting thing about Vermont state parks and most state parks, and that is if you show up on a bicycle or walking, they'll find a place for you.
Oh.
Even if the campsites are all full, they'll find some place.
Uh-huh.
Stuart and I, when we were on a tour, we went up to Grout Pond
Oh, yeah.
in the National Forest, and you can tell them about our experience there. They were full up the night we got there.
Oh, yes, yeah. But I don't know if I can't remember now exactly how we found the camping spot. but-
Well, it was basically it was near the outhouse.
Yeah, that's right. That's a very convenient in that
Yeah,
respect.
it was, you know, really didn't have to worry about that at all.
But we had minimal camping gear. I mean, you just had your hammock with the cover over it, and I think I had even less. And
yeah,
so
you were just kind of laying out a sheet on the ground.
Slept under the stars.
so we didn't need too much. But no, that's right.
Yeah.
Huh.
That was one of actually a few times I camped with a bicycle.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And,
Yeah.
Well, and I was just going to say that's a nice example of a little 3-day tour that
Yeah.
we took.
Mhm.
We stayed at Grout Pond the first night. We went up
Oh, yeah.
Kelly
okay.
Stand
Yep, right.
to Grout Pond. Then we went to Hapgood Pond in
Oh,
Peru the
yeah.
second night, and then went across the road that goes to Mount Tabor from Landgrove,
Oh.
behind through the White Rocks Recreation Area, up and down to Mount Tabor and back home that night.
Uh-huh.
So that was a very nice little 3-day tour. As you can see, the mileages aren't nothing fantastic there.
Yeah.
I think it was about 20 miles each day, total of 60 miles in 3 days.
Uh-huh.
But that way you can stop and admire the scenery and take it. We stopped at the country store in Jericho, I think, and had or not Jericho.
Wells.
Yeah.
There's one anyway.
Had a beer and that was, it was just it was a nice trip, nice relaxed trip. Some tough hills, but a nice trip.
Yeah.
It brings up something about groups and cycling. As I mentioned that I found I like to cycle with groups, but and I cycle with the bicycle group here. But when Hart and I first started cycling, we had a trip in Romania with a group of Austrians, and it was of an intermediate size. If you were in a very large group, you find people are going your pace. This was about 15 or 20 people, and what you often found was that you know, you're afraid of holding them up. You want to stop and maybe take a picture. No, you got to go on. And there's a certain sort of competitiveness that enters in. Yeah. So you say, he's not keeping up, and maybe you don't want to be the last person to the bus in the morning, and so on. So it was a wonderful trip in Romania, and it was a sort of country that we didn't really want to try on our own. But after that trip, my wife Hardy said, never again in a group unless it's a big group where I could find more freedom. And at that point, I bought the folding bikes. And fortunately, I didn't have to go by myself. I could go with my wife, sure. And we enjoyed it a lot more. And a great sense of adventure sometime. Our second trip was in the Czech Republic. And we started from Prague and went to Vienna. And got out of the city and said, what a wonderful, we don't know where we're staying tonight, we'll just find a place along the way. And that great sense of freedom.
It is a great sense of freedom.
And you don't have that with a group, of course. Maybe you have a good friend, Bruce and I went together, or have a spouse or something, and then you're not by yourself. But, or on the other hand, these many tours that may have 500 riders. That's terrible, riding with 500 other people. Oh, yeah. But it's not. It's not at all.
Oh, really?
Because they're soon spread out, and you will find people riding at your pace and new and have something to say to you, and that's a lot of fun.
Yep. And then you get together at night and talk with the people who rode at a different pace than you did, and you have adventures to share, and it's a very congenial way to travel.
So what about the local bike paths and
okay, as I think probably most of the people in your audience know, we've been working on what has come to be known as the Ninja Path for about 3 decades now.
Wow.
And probably everyone has heard that there's a large bike ped grant that has been received to work on the trail. And the trail, it's my mistake, I should have brought a map of it today where we could look at it. But it will run basically from the entry of Bennington College all the way to where the farmers market is held along Willemsack Creek in downtown Bennington. Now, most of the area to be developed is going to be along the Willemsack River, behind Hannaford's and behind the new Walmart, and come down the river that way. And they have received a large bike ped grant to build that part. There's also, of course, sort of an in-kind contribution by the town. The town would very much like to get, because of the restrictions on the money and one thing and another, there's a lot of permits to get and one thing and another, so they won't be able to begin construction probably this season. They may, but maybe not. But the town could begin construction on a piece that they're going to do that's up by the Silk Road 67 intersection, which, as everyone knows, is not a good intersection. I go through it practically every day on a bicycle, and I can tell you it's not a good intersection to go through on a bike. They would like to start work on that little section from Silk Road down to Hannaford Plaza this season. And the town is quite willing to give us equipment to use. The town is quite willing to provide personnel to operate the equipment. What we need is material. We need gravel, we need paving material, we need signs, we need pedestrian crossing indicators there in front of the college, and that involves a lot of material cost, which the town really can't pay for. So we're soliciting donations for that. Bennington College has given us a very generous grant. Whipstock Hill Preservation Society has given us a very generous grant, which is a matching grant. So we need to match that grant, and so we're trying to raise as much money as we can. We've raised over half of it already, and we need about a few $1,000s more, and we then have a package of money large enough that the town could actually begin construction, and we could start this season. And of course, I'd love to see that. Anybody who's interested can contact Dan Monks at the town of Bennington, or you can just make out checks to the town of Bennington noting that they're for the Ninja Trail, and they'll go into the right pot. And so the money's actually being collected by the town to fund this the materials for this part of the trail. So I'd advise anybody who's feels that they could help with this project to please make that contribution.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll be able to get over the top, get the matching grant, get the pool of money that we need for the materials.
So in the past, there was always this talk about, oh, well, why don't we make the old railroad into a bike path? So where is that now?
I couldn't give you the most up-to-date information, but it does look like at least part of the old rail bed will be used as part of the trail.
Really?
For years, we've been trying to come to an agreement with the railroad about taking over that old right-of-way, and it looks like we finally may have an agreement whereby we may be able to use part of that. I don't think it'll be as people originally envisioned, but there certainly will be an off-road portion that will use part of that old rail bed. Again, I'm not really up to date on exactly where that stands right now, but I know that they were making progress in trying to move toward incorporating that as part of the project. So. And there will be a lot of work done on Benmont Avenue to make it safer and easier to access for bicycles. So all of those will be part of this big project. As I say, there's a lot of permits and things to get started with that, but this one little piece up by Silk Road, we could start right away if we had the money for it.
Now, wasn't there a bridge you had to build somewhere in that route?
Yes, there's a bridge across Forest Brook. The grant that we got from the bike ped facility at V-Trans will pay for that bridge.
Oh.
So that's part of the planning. And you're right. That was one of the biggest drawbacks is trying to get across Furnace Brook. But that's been solved now.
Yeah. So another local biking path, is that one from North Adams down to Pittsfield, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never been. You've been on that before, right?
Actually, strange that you mentioned, I just rode that about 2 weeks ago with some people in the Green Mountain Club, and it's a wonderful ride, completely flat and very heavily used.
Yeah.
So it's been a real success. I think the only hesitation you'd say, okay, I want to go for a bicycle ride. Well, I have to load my car up and drive a half hour or 45 minutes to go on this ride, but still, it's a worthwhile experience. Even nicer if it was right here in town.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Or if they just kind of extend it up.
Extended, that would be fantastic.
So how long is that ride?
It's 11 miles one way. Of course, you have to go back, so it's 11 miles the other way. It ends up at the shopping center. What's the name of that shopping center? What's the name of the town?
The Berkshire Mall.
Berkshire Mall, which is now virtually closed down.
Oh, I didn't know that. So you've got a lot of space that you can
Got a
ride a
lot of
bicycle
space.
around the parking lot.
We remember when there was great controversy about building it. Nobody wanted to build it. Well, I guess
they had a reason. Yeah. They are planning. The bike path ends right at the road that goes into Berkshire Mall. There are plans to extend it south into Pittsfield, so that you'll be able to get into Pittsfield on the same trail. But I don't know when that will happen. But I know that's on the map that I've seen that it would be extending it. And they've talked about extending it on the north end from Adams to North Adams too.
Oh, really?
The trail does not. It presently ends at the visitor center in Adams, at the north end, but that roadbed continues all the way to North Adams. So there's discussion about how they can extend the trail up to North Adams, which would be a great thing. It'd just bring it that much closer for those of us here in Vermont who would like to use it.
So there's a Catamount ski trail, right? That goes from the northern border of Vermont to southern. Is there some plan for some kind of a bicycle path that goes north or south?
The only thing I know of is, as I say, this Western New England Greenway,
Oh,
which
yeah.
we'll be riding this summer. That is north to south.
Mm.
It's called the Western New England Greenway. It's also now designated as U.S. Bike Route 7.
Huh.
There is a sort of an official network of bicycle marked routes all over the country. They're aiming to have 50,000 miles of marked bicycle routes across the country, I think before 2020. These, unfortunately, are not bike paths of the quality of the Ashewilticook Bike Trail. I mean, that is a beautiful trail, and it's very well maintained. These are mostly on-road routes that will just be signed as bike routes. And there are maps that you can get right now to ride the whole route. Again, that's at WNEG.org, Western New England Greenway.org. You can find maps that cover the entire route from Connecticut to Montreal there. So you can, and it's got all the cue sheets that tell you turn left, turn right at every, and the mileages all along the route. And it's that's the nearest thing we're going to have in Vermont, I think, to a continuous bikeway. There is in Vermont what is called the D&H Rail Trail, Delaware and Hudson Rail Trail, which actually is in two sections from Pulteney up to Castleton, and then there's a lower section that runs from West Paulette down to almost down to Rupert.
Rupert, yeah.
The section, Stuart and I have ridden that. The section from West Paulette down to Rupert is rugged. Okay, maybe not primitive, but it's rugged. So you need a bike more like this to be comfortable on a mountain bike. The northern section is stone chips, but it's a very good surface. You can ride a road bike on it. They've filled in some of the low spots with larger gravel, but for the most part, the 12 or 15 miles there is a very nice trail, and it's an old rail line. It's straight as a die from Pulteney to Castleton. So, and ends up right up at the campus at Castleton State College.
Bruce, you know about the plans for the Cross Vermont Trail from Groton to Montpelier and beyond, I guess.
Yes.
Were you involved in any way in that?
And not directly. When I was part of the Vermont Bike Ped Coalition, they were working particularly with the Green Mountain Bicycle Club, who've taken a lot of responsibility for it in central Vermont. I just talked to someone last weekend who's part of that, and plans are going forward with that. But that's really a generational project. It's 90 miles, and eventually they hope to have an off-road trail for the whole thing.
Off-road for the whole thing, yeah. I know some of it is now.
Right now it's marked all the way across the state. But again, it's just on-road route mostly. But eventually that will be should be an off-road route all the way across from, Wells River to Burlington.
It's for northern part of the state.
Yes. Yeah. And then there's another trail north of that, the Lamoille Valley Trail, which they're working on. They've built the first phase of that now, and it will tie into the Missisquoi Trail, which runs from Newport to Missisquoi Bay. Which it's a wonderful trail. It's an old road bed again. It's not paved, but it's all gravel or stone chip surface, and very flat because it's an old road bed. But the scenery around it is not flat, and it's really a beautiful ride. Yeah, it's very nice. So those are some of the things that are going on that I know of as far as trails in Vermont are concerned.
Do you have any connection at all with the yellow bike practice? They have this. They tried it here, I guess, a few years ago. Were you in on that at all?
Yes, I used the bikes actually a couple of times. I'm one of the few people I think who
Yeah, right.
used it. The idea was to give people who were through hiking the Appalachian Trail a way to get around town when they came into town.
Oh, that.
And Steve Hinchcliffe, who ran Nature's Closet,
Yep.
bought into it. He had two of the bikes at his shop.
Uh-huh.
And there was one at South Street Cafe, and there were a couple others scattered around. That where you could just come in, you could go into South Street Cafe, just sign on a clipboard, and use the bike for the day. And it was free.
Uh-huh.
So if you came down and you were a through hiker and you'd hitchhike down to town, you had a way to get out to one of the grocery stores or to other places to shop or whatever. And then when you're done, you just drop it off at any of the locations.
Uh-huh.
And I think for a few years it worked pretty well, but it got to be that the just maintaining the bikes
Mm-hmm.
didn't seem like it was worth the effort anymore, because they'd find them locked in the same place. When they put them out in the spring,
Yeah.
the bike was in the same place, locked to the rack, in exactly the same place, hadn't been used for the entire season.
Oh, wow.
So, and Highlander Bicycles, who is our great local bike shop, was doing the maintenance just
Oh,
for
that
free.
is-
That was
yeah.
just a gift to the community. So, then of course Steve moved his business, and so we didn't really have a place for a location
I
there
see.
anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
But I had used them. I've used them other places. I was just in Chattanooga a few weeks ago, and they have a bike share program there, which is wonderful. There are bikes all over town, and you can there's hardly any place within the main part of Chattanooga where you're more than a block away from a bike stand.
Wow.
And they're very easy to use. The prices are much more reasonable. I think it's $8 a day,
Oh, to be
and you don't have to do it all at once. In other words, you can stick your card in and get one of the bikes, ride it to another location, park the bike there, and walk a few blocks doing whatever you're doing. Go to another one, stick your card in, and you still got the use of a bike from anywhere from the system for all day for about $8.
Oh, wow.
And they have a monthly commuter card too, just like you'd have on the bus or the subway in New York. That was very nice to see, and they got a lot of use in Chattanooga. We'd come back to our hotel at night, and the rack would be full of bikes, and you'd walk out on the street at 9 o'clock in the morning, and there were like 2 or 3 left because they were off
Wow.
being used by somebody.
Yeah, what a great thing.
Yeah, it's very nice.
Okay, well, I guess we're down to our last minute or so here. Anybody have any final word?
One more thing I'd like to mention is, again, this National Bike Travel Weekend, which is June 3rd through 5th. We'll have the nights of the 3rd and the 4th at Lake Shaftesbury State Park. The lean-to campsites are free. You need to contact me at the Cycling Academy, all one word, .net, or at Comcast.net. And just to register, just so I know how many people are coming. But I think we'll have plenty of room for the number of people who want to arrive. I can send you cue sheets from 3 different locations to start out. You're welcome to try bike camping that weekend.
Wow.
I'll give it a
June 3rd
try.
through 5th. I hope so. I hope to see you there. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
How about you, Nathan?
Well, that sounds inviting, yes. Yeah.
You can bring the tandem.
Right, we'll get the tire pumped up here and we'll all go biking together.
That'd be great.
Well, thank you both so much. It's been a fantastic conversation. And I hope it encourages more people to get their bikes out and go pedaling.
Exactly. Enjoy.
Yeah.